I'm Stephen Chung, and on behalf of the Working Tools podcast, as one of the founders of the show, I'd like to take a moment to thank you all for your continued support and interest in our casual conversations around Freemasonry. We hope to continue providing quality programming and enlightenment, as well as a bit of fun along the way. And we certainly hope you enjoy this next show, a teaser show, if you will, about the 7 common things that we need to overcome as Freemasons, especially as we come out of this physical distancing situation and begin to meet again in person. As we start fresh with Season 3 in 2021, we will have an in-depth discussion on each of the 7 blunders that must be overcome. And as there is no better time to begin the work than right now, I invite you to enjoy this multi-part series on overcoming the 7 blunders of Freemasonry.
Hello, and welcome to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast, where today, Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth and I, Very Worshipful Brother Matthew Appel from here in Washington, and our friend from the North, Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung, our usual co-host, will be listening to a presentation by Most Worshipful Brother Jim Mendoza, who is the past Grand Master of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington, who will be discussing overcoming the 7 blunders of Freemasonry.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. I appreciate that introduction, and of course, it's always a pleasure to join Very Worshipful Brother David and Worshipful Brother Stephen up from the Great White North. I see that you're appropriately attired. You know, you got the proper toque on. I believe that's the correct phrase for the Canadians. But I'm pleased to be able to present my thoughts on overcoming what I will call the 7 blunders of Freemasonry. You know, it can't be denied that COVID-19 has completely changed life. And while many hope those changes are temporary, this pandemic has unearthed some weaknesses in the status quo. Now, after every major crisis, humanity is forced to identify those weaknesses and evolve accordingly. We have seen increases in online ordering to receive goods and services. I mean, give you an idea, my next door neighbor gets something literally every day from every major delivery company. Now, I don't know what they're doing, but I can tell you this. They just recently had an electrician and the cable people next door. So I'm a little concerned as to what's happening next door. But that aside, the use of telemedicine to see our doctors. I had a recent physical, if you will, via telemedicine. And of course, we can't deny the work that teachers in partnership with the support staff have done with respect to implementing virtual education for students. Guess what? Our fraternity is no exception to this reality. Lodges, districts, and of course our Grand Lodge have been taking advantage of web conferencing programs such as Zoom to provide education, handle payment of bills and distribution of charity, and to simply just connect. Some 10 years ago, in an article entitled "The 7 Blunders of Freemasonry," and the author is unknown. So if anybody can tell us who the author is, I would love to know, because I'd love to shake his hand, even if it's just virtually. This article made an appearance. And as we look ahead to the hope for possibility of returning to what we have all missed, it might be a good idea to revisit the article to see what changes we need to be making. Because when we come back, if we come back to what I will call the same old, then in my opinion, we will have missed a golden opportunity, and it will be, in my viewpoint, a huge disappointment. So let's talk about what I will call the 7 blunders of Freemasonry. Number 1, ritual without meaning. Right? Now, too many times we are more concerned about performing the ritual perfectly without understanding what it means. Ritual for the sake of tradition is worthless. However, ritual for the sake of enlightenment is valuable. An understanding of the ritual's meaning is far more important than just memorizing it. if you understand what you're saying and project that understanding, you will inspire not just the candidate, but those all around. Here's the payoff. Inspired people take action. I'll give you an example. Dan Boren was past deputy, by the way, was a young fellowcraft. I didn't know who he was at the time. And he was part of a class of, I believe, 7. And I noticed that he was leaning forward the whole time I was giving the middle chamber lecture. And I'm going, this is kind of cool. And if you've ever been in instruction, you kind of lean toward the person who seems to be paying the most attention to you. So here I am paying attention to Dan, hopefully not at the expense of the others. Well, I'd been giving the lecture, or actually all the lectures for this particular lodge for years. And then all of a sudden, the requests stopped coming. I figured, great, they've developed their own infrastructure. That's wonderful. Here's what I found out a couple of years later. Dan Boren, after he heard that lecture, went home and learned that lecture. So he learned his posting lecture and the middle chamber lecture. And before he was even made a master mason, was giving the middle chamber lecture. That's something that inspires me, to give you an idea. Getting back to that, inspiration leads to enthusiasm. And that is positive. That is positively contagious, because inspiration is a virtuous cycle. When you inspire one, you inspire others, and you reinforce your own inspiration. So look around for inspiration, but remember these words: that which is praiseworthy in others, you should carefully emulate. What works for them may not work for you. Now, in case anybody's wondering, who are my inspirations? Al Mungeon is a brother in Washington who I am a big fan of. Al Mungeon, the best way to put it, he gives the middle chamber lecture as if he's a Baptist minister who gets lost in his sermon. And you can imagine people leaning forward the whole time, just hanging on every words. Also a big fan of one of my mentors and very worship brother David and very worship brother Matt know, Al Jorgensen. Al Jorgensen just gives solid ritual, and I love that. And there's a younger Mason down in the Olympia area, Brian Morgan. I believe he was senior warden at the time, and they were this lodge was having a visit of a sister lodge from England, and so there were a lot of people in the room, and Brian was going to confer the second degree. We're talking about a senior deacon, okay? He commanded the room. Again, look for that inspiration, because guess what? That'll inspire you, so that way your ritual is with meaning and not without. Let's talk about fellowship without frivolity. We can't be afraid to have fun in the course of our proceedings. It has been said that the utmost extension of fraternal feeling and affections which can exist between man and man is expected to be displayed amongst the brethren in a Freemasons lodge. I think of some of the fun events that are held throughout my jurisdiction here in Washington. White socks and wigs night down in Vader, where you show up wearing white socks and a wig. And be prepared, because you better bring some money with you, because guess what? Whoever's Grand Master that year is going to start issuing fines. And the fines get made up. I mean, when I was Grand Master, I issued fines for everybody who was right-handed, because I'm left-handed. As an example. I issued fines for people who wore wigs that weren't colorful. So here's everybody with a white wig, except me. Of course, I've got this hot purple wig on. Guess what? You know, that whole thing. Here's a picture of the lumberjack feed in Newport. You wear a tie, it gets cut off. And yes, that's an axe that very worship brother Ryan Leonard has in his hand. And by the way, very worship brother Ryan is blind. Okay? So I should point out, everyone else was having fun. I was scared out of my wits. But Ryan now is the designated tie chopper. And it's a great thing. Now, true, there's a charitable purpose to a lot of these things, a lot of these events, but it's a fun way to raise money, because that's what sustains the event. Now, for those of you who attended the annual communication in Washington, some of you will remember when I was junior grand warden, I had this complete inability to tell the time. I would be asked, what is the hour? And I would try to answer back in naval terms, and it kind of fell flat, let's just say. But again, it was just a way to have fun. Of course, all that said, you got to remember when you're doing this, time and place, right? Got to be a time and place. Let's talk about the concept of quantity without quality. And this is something that every jurisdiction deals with. After years of declining membership, we started focusing on quantity rather than quality. All right. The more we focused on increasing membership, the higher became the non-payment of dues, demits, and guess what? Unfulfilled brethren paying their annual dues but never attending lodge. Quality of new candidates is more important than quantity, and by focusing on quality, increasing membership will eventually result. So let this be a commercial for the fact that there are jurisdictions out there, I mean, Washington and BC Yukon, that practice the 6 steps program. The idea of making sure that that individual understands what he's getting into. And at the same time, the lodge itself doing the proper vetting. Because because the two are connected. Now, here's the thing. Quality also extends beyond our brethren. We should focus on quality in everything we do as Freemasonry, Freemasons, within and outside of the lodge, particularly in the way we behave toward each other and the civility and respect we afford others, even if we are in strong disagreement. We only have to exercise tolerance when we disagree with the words or actions of another. It takes a deal of effort to be tolerant, but Freemasonry cannot thrive without peace and harmony. Quality does not mean expensive, but it cannot be achieved by being cheap. Clean and well-kept lodge buildings, just like, I'm seeing like at David's building out there in Auburn, exemplary ritual and conduct in lodge, a varied lodge program, thriving festive boards, and good deeds in our communities are hallmarks of quality. If your lodge events and meetings attract visitors, they will surely attract your own members. How about this? Education without philosophy. Many times we think of Masonic education as being a lesson on the local lodge's history, a famous Mason, the history of the worldwide fraternity, or how to do the ritual properly. But if no philosophy is covered in Masonic education, then little self-improvement is accomplished. Philosophy has been defined as the pursuit of meaning. There exists in man a philosophical drive to want to know. That's why we ask questions. It's not enough to tell a brother that's just the way it's done. He wants to know why. Discussing Masonic lessons in terms of philosophy, ideas, and a man's conduct is what truly transforms men into Masons. It is important to discuss topics that are foreign to a lodge's membership, and it's sometimes even necessary to challenge our preconceived ideologies through Masonic education. But beyond that, it's also okay to have education that kind of tells the brethren about each other. Let me give you a perfect example. Many lodges have pictures on the wall of past masters. Do we know about him? Do we know about the guy who was worshipful master in 1945? Because if we learn about him, we might get a lesson or two about him. A lesson that can impact us. So while on its surface it doesn't seem philosophical, it's very philosophical. Because again, now we can say, this is what this brother did, this is how it can apply to me, this is why it's important to the lodge. A challenge to the three of you that are here as hosts. Charity without connection. You ever wonder what the words "do good unto all" really mean? For me, when I think about those words, "do good unto all," I'm reminded about this fact that charity is so inextricably linked to Freemasonry that you really can't have one without the other. Now, our early brethren understood charity to mean the alleviating of the suffering of a brother, or the dependents of a deceased brother by giving money or sustenance until circumstances improved. In other words, there was a natural connection with the act of charity and the need for it. Now, today, charity has evolved and expanded to include giving some of our time and talents in service to our communities as a whole, and not just to our brethren and dependents. Bottom line, whatever we do, charity has to mean something. It cannot be the unmeaning doling out of alms. All right? Because when you do that, you increase the potential that you're amongst the brethren that they're being put upon. The best charity is the charity that's given willingly. I've been in the nonprofit world for many years, and I can tell you that people are unwilling, if not flat out resentful, to donate their time and money if they feel that there's no connection to what they're doing, regardless of how important said charity may be. But let's look at how charity with connection improves the Masonic experience. When I take you back in time to when we had the landslides in Oso, which is in Snohomish County in our state, all right, devastated this entire community. Arlington Lodge, which is basically literally a hop, skip, and a jump from Oso, took it upon themselves to support that community because they felt it was important to do that. You know what else is important? To support some of our senior brethren, especially in this time of COVID. Many have isolated themselves. Many are alone. I love the story. Rob Thompson, who's a member of Verity Lodge. They normally do this big family Thanksgiving, but you know what he did instead? He got up and cooked, and he delivered a meal to one of the new widows. He delivered a meal to his father and his wife, and delivered a meal to his mother. That's charity right there, and that's connection. Frugality without discretion. All right, folks, I'm going to lay something on you. Contrary to popular belief, frugality is not a tenet, a cardinal virtue, or a landmark of the fraternity. I think some brethren take the term Freemason a bit too literally. Not sure why, but it seems that whenever Masons decide to hold a function for fellowship, a discussion typically ensues about how to make the function have the smallest impact on the lodge finances and the wallets of the members. This results in paper plates, meager meals, boring and less well-attended events. To spend money wisely in order to make fellowship a grand time is wise for the lodge that wants to be successful. As many of you, as the panelists here know, my lodge, Frank S. Land 313, hosts a crab feed every March. It's us and 400 of our closest friends. We typically raise $40,000 every year. Now, we spend a lot of money to get there in rental facilities, securing of the crabs, securing of auction items, marketing, all that stuff. But you know something? We have a great time. And we've actually attracted people to the lodge because they say, hey, these guys are do a first-class thing. But look beyond your events. What about your lodge building? Your building says Freemasonry 24/7. What is it saying, if not screaming about Freemasonry in general and your lodge in specific? You know, I know of a story of somebody who applied for a scholarship with the lodge. And when they drove by the lodge, they pulled the application back because they said, there's no way that this group can give me that kind of money. Bottom line, it is acceptable for the lodge to spend its funds on worthwhile activities and endeavors that will enhance the Masonic experience of its brethren. Not everything should be done in the cheapest way, a habit to which, in my viewpoint, we have become far too accustomed. Leadership without competence. Here's the hard truth. A man does not deserve to be master of his lodge solely because he has spent a certain amount of years attending meetings or because he is simply next in line. More than we care to admit, we elect our leaders without any regard for the skills that they possess in order to function in that capacity. We should only elect competent and qualified men to preside over us. Competency is about capabilities, skills, results, and track record. A lack of competency places a sort of hidden tax upon the lodge. Incompetent leadership seems to slow the pace of every communication, every interaction, every strategy, every decision. My experience is that incompetence doubles the cost of doing things and triples the time it takes to get them done. By contrast, competence pays a sort of dividend. Competence, like enthusiasm, is a force multiplier, enabling communication, interactions, and decisions, and to move with incredible efficiency. The best way for any lodge to develop competent leaders is to mentor every step along the way. Engage your superstar past masters. Chat with your deputy. Get counsel from the brethren you respect the most. So those are the 7 blunders. Your job is, when you see them, is to positively react to them. It's the old line. Be the change you want to see, right? Now, all that said, this is the way going forward. But what about our present condition? We got a problem, don't we? In some cases, Freemasonry has come to a complete halt, and that's wrong. Now, make sure that you understand what I'm saying here. I'm not saying what the Grand Masters in various jurisdictions have done is wrong. They have to react to what they see. They have to react to the edicts given down by their elected leaders. But what's wrong is that lodges have just chosen to stop. My brothers, Freemasonry cannot stop. So there are some things that I'd like to recommend that you do to make sure that it doesn't stop. Because here's the thing. I'm of the personal belief that the one thing people miss is this: shaking a brother's hand. Or as I like to say it, 5 points of fellowship without the 6 feet. So what are some things that we can do? Well, food banks are in dire need of help, because you know who typically volunteers at food banks? Seniors. You know who's not going out right now? Seniors. You can do so much at a food bank. You can help them with the free lunch by packing the free lunches. You can help them move stuff from their freezer to the refrigerators, help them rearrange the refrigerators. You know what else? You can sort bread. I mean, I'm saying, if everybody's been to a food bank, they got a wall of bread that they got to go through. Because if there's one piece of mold, they discard the bread, but they don't know that. You can help unload trucks. These are things you can do. And as long as you practice good social distancing, guess what? Masons are able to do tactile things, and they like that. Make your Zoom meetings interesting. You know, there are Masonic speakers all over the world. And I'm preaching to the choir here with the podcast, because you guys have gotten people from all over the world. But you all know that. There are speakers all over the world that are dying to share. And sometimes they'll share more than once. You know? Get them to come to your Zooms. Make it interesting. And as much as we love email, get on the phone. Call your brethren. Find out how they're doing. I get we want to do degrees. I get we want to do that. But you know something? If we just simply connect, we'll have that Masonic experience. And so to the brethren of the Working Tools podcast, I thank you for allowing me to kind of expound on what I believe we need to do going forward, but also right now, so that way we can escape and overcome the 7 blunders of Freemasonry. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Most Worshipful Brother Jim. We really appreciate your being here.
Most definitely. That was a great presentation.
Yeah, I will say, as a board member of the Linwood Food Bank, I heartily support the Masons supporting your local food bank, and anyone else for that matter supporting your local food bank. And yes, we could definitely use the help.
You know what I'm talking about the wall of bread, don't you?
it gets crazy in there sometimes. Yep, absolutely. So, did you guys have any other questions for our Most Worshipful Brother here? All right. So again, thank you, Most Worshipful, for doing this presentation. The intent of today is to listen to your presentation, and this will be the last episode that airs in 2020. and it's sort of a teaser for the next upcoming series. We're going to do a series of, well, the intent is to do shorter episodes, but knowing the way we go, they may be not regular sized episodes, each devoted to the each point of your conversation that you just had, or your presentation you just did over the seven blunders and overcoming them. And so those will be the opening salvo, if you will, of the 2021 podcast.
Oh, fantastic.
So so as of when we're recording right now, we've had 88 episodes have gone out of this podcast. So this will be number 89, 90, 91, I think. The 91st podcast.
Don't make us do math on camera, Matt.
Oh yeah, it never goes well. But I look forward to this conversations and what we can do in the new year. And I thank you very much for being here and being here for the next several episodes as we work our way through these 7 blunders.
It's my pleasure.
And overcoming them. So
I know that David. I know that David has what I'll call the original script. So he was probably looking, going, "Oh my gosh, he's saying more."
We're gonna need to get that updated script, but I do want to say just before we close out here, thank you all for listening to us for the last year and a half, and we hope that the next year is interesting and warrants your time and attention.
Yes. Yep.
And I really want to thank David and Matthew for helping carry the Working Tools podcast for the last year and a bit, with Connor being, pretty much MIA, health-wise has kept him away and whatnot. And I really appreciate all the things you guys do to help this thing carry on. And Jim, great to have you on again. Look forward to the many more episodes we'll do together.
My pleasure. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all of you, and for those who celebrate who celebrate other faiths, happy holidays to you as well.
Hear, hear. And so, on behalf of the Working Tools podcast, as was just stated, we hope you all have a wonderful New Year, and thank you for tuning into our show. And we look forward to having discussions with you in the future. Goodbye.